Thank you very much, Michael, for that lovely introduction. So I'm going to talk you through the training landscape in Ireland. What does it look like at the moment, and what changes are occurring, and what it might mean for you as a trainer? Now, some of you know all this already. Some of you probably know more about this than I do. And for some of you, I hope I'm going to be filling in the gaps. So, okay. So I suppose if we're all kind of familiar with, we've had some discussion this morning, and some of what I'm going to say might be a bit controversial, Tim, so we can chat later. We're all familiar with the kind of the apprenticeship model of training, the sort of, is it moving? No? Okay. The see one, do one, teach one approach, which was first described in 1890 by William Stuart Halstead, who then went on to become the first chief of surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital, who transformed the surgical education program there by creating a residency program. But he was not only just interested in the surgical trainees, he was also very interested in a system to train the surgeons, but creating teachers and role models for the surgeons during their training. And the residency program that he developed actually essentially remained the same for about a century after that. A lot has changed, I suppose, since I was a junior doctor, and I'm allowed to say junior doctor because that's what I was called and I owned it, and this probably is a fairly good male representative of me, right down to the bulging pockets with who needs a clinic room when you can just carry the FBC bottle, the cotton wool bubbles and the alcohol swabs in your pocket, and saves on time, no rummaging for me. The bags under my eyes from my routine 32-hour rostered shifts, and in one rotation where I was on a 1 in 3 on call, 54-hour rostered shifts. So a lot has changed, and let's face it, a lot has changed for the better. And I think we're constantly looking at how we train and how we can improve how we train our trainees. And in 2014, the RCPI undertook a review of their training processes. It was undertaken by Professor Imrie, who was president of the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Canada. And really looking at, on the back of that review, he made a number of recommendations on how training could be improved. He made 10 recommendations. One of them, again, has been discussed a little this morning, and it was a move towards competency-based medical education. But I think the main piece here was it was a move away from a strictly time-based activities. If I'm an SHO for 2 years, then I'm done on my BST. So those days were gone. Now you had to have some outcome from your 2 years in BST and how that might look and how that might be assessed. But what he also did in his 10 recommendations is he made a recommendation that trainers should be supported, that trainers should be developed, should be recognized for the work, and should be accountable for providing high-quality teaching and assessment. Looking at a quality approach to medical education isn't unique to Ireland. These are the standards for medical education in the UK, published in 2015. What I like is so theme 2 is the educational governance and leadership, and this is about improving the quality and outcomes of education and training, and maybe measuring the performance against standards for training. And then their theme 4, which I'm even more, I suppose, wedded to, is the support of the educators, the support of you, the trainers that provide the training, and that the educators should receive support, should be resourced, and should have time to meet their education and training responsibilities. A little further afield, in the Royal College of Australasian Physicians, the Royal College for Australasian Physicians, they published this Education, Leadership and Supervision program, and key to that was an educator should have the capacity to train and to lead, that the educators or trainers should have a workload, a training number, enough time and the resources to fulfill the role and do it the best that they can. Then coming back to Ireland, I'll first take a nod to one of our other postgraduate training bodies, and over on the right-hand side you can see the ICGP published their standards for postgraduate training schemes in May 2020. Much more recently then, and I suppose across all training in Ireland, where you may be familiar with the work on the National Task Force and NCHD Workforce, a huge body of work looking at standards for training, and not just how we deliver training, but the training environment for the trainees, the facilities, their access to learning aids, etc. And then I'm sure anyone who's involved in training will be familiar with the Medical Council accreditation standards for postgraduate medical education and training. These underwent a review last year. This time last year, I think the review feedback process closed, and I understand that that review is now complete, that the revised standards have now been accepted, and that the IMC are interacting with an external body looking at how they might be implemented. So when you think about training people to become a doctor and then training them to practice as a doctor and training them to specialize as a doctor, I think it's like a minefield of beautiful logos. So trying to get your head around where all this sits in the context of how we train from medical student to specialist. I have to admit, and anyone who knows me well will understand how this happened. I'm an IT dinosaur, so I stole this lovely slide from my colleague, Professor John Cook in Waterford, and this is what he did with that. Isn't that much nicer? So you can see at the very top we have our governing body, and our governing body is the Irish Medical Council, and they're our governing body for how we educate our medical students through to doctors at different stages of their training, through to specialists, and then our post-training, our professional competence, and maintaining our skills. On the left-hand side, he's grouped very nicely together all of our medical schools and how they look after our medical students and our interns. And then on the far right-hand side, we have you can see just above the box there, I don't know if this does this, no, okay. We have the forum, and again, this is a concept that I had never heard of until I became quite involved in my own faculty. It's the Forum of Irish Postgraduate Medical Training Bodies, and in 2006, it was a coming together of all the postgraduate training bodies in Ireland. So you can see them all there: RCSI, Royal College of Physicians, and College of Anaesthetists, ICGP, and the College of Psychiatrists, under one postgraduate training body, the Forum, to try and work together, also draw a little bit on what one is doing well and what the other might be able to adapt and for their own training body, but really coming together with a common goal of improving training for their postgraduate training in Ireland. And then obviously in the centre, central to all of the training piece, is the HSE and the NDTP. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Forum, because this is one of the things that I found quite difficult. Just by way of interest, if anyone's interested in reading it, the Forum produced a strategic framework for postgraduate medical training in Ireland in August 2021, and it is really worthwhile looking at, and it's really quite inspiring to see where they want to see our postgraduate training going. They developed a program. The main goal of Forum is to enhance effective training in postgraduate medical training in Ireland. And they pulled together in this document a programme of strategic investment in postgraduate training and education in Ireland and how that should look. And the first strategic objective in that programme was an accelerated, targeted improvement for trainers and for trainees, and with professional structures to support training and clinical site level. And I think this is a very important development for us as trainers. And the priority action for that first objective was to develop a clinical educator post. So recognising the requirement for you to have time to do your training and to develop these clinical educator posts at training site level to support professional postgraduate training. We're all familiar with the undergraduate training model, whereby you may have a professor of medicine who is 0.5 whole-time equivalent of his day is devoted to training, teaching, developing the teaching programs, assessment, examining, etc. Whereas that is not the model that we have seen in postgraduate training. And this is an acknowledgement that this is somewhere we need to be going. So I suppose that kind of brings me to the standards piece. Like I said, there's a lot of, the way I would look at it is we have a lot of standards in our clinical practice, and we react to new standards and new guidelines, and we try and reflect on our clinical practice. Can we do it differently? Should we be changing anything in it? So I think it's reasonable, as being a trainer and being a postgraduate educator becomes a more recognised role within our job as a clinician, that we should really have standards to look at aspects of our training, looking at our training site, our facilities, how the training's being delivered, so that it is effective. And with really the whole idea being a focus on quality and how we can raise the quality of the training for trainees. And I'm going to talk through these kind of 4 pillars of how I see your future as a trainer looking. And at the moment, I've made the first pillar of standards and quality assurance orange, but we'll see where that goes by the end of the talk. So the next piece I'm going to talk to is looking the importance of recognising the professional role of the postgraduate trainer. And I have alluded to this a little bit, but I think for me, one of the final hurrah moments was when this programme, the iCET programme, was launched this year. You're maybe familiar with the iCAT programme, so this is, I suppose, kind of a parallel programme looking at training training and professional development of our future leaders in postgraduate clinical education in Ireland. It's a national programme. It provides a trainee in HST with training in postgraduate clinical education. The pilot starts this July. During their training programme, they undertake an MD or even a PhD in medical education. So a little step above maybe some of the postgraduate clinical education diplomas, which I've done myself, or some people go on to do a master's. But this is another step higher than that they will do an MD. And the idea is then you're training your postgraduate educators and leaders for the future. It's really an innovative educational pathway focused on postgraduate education. The initial curriculum development was funded by the NTTP. We have 2 trainees enrolled this year, one in Institute of Medicine, who is based in University Hospital Waterford, and one in obstetrics and gynecology. If you're going to, another important, I think, part of as we develop the role of the trainer and acknowledge the role of the trainer is that we need to provide the trainer with education. So like this session we have here today, to give you an opportunity to hear about new ways of delivering your curriculum or your training activities and to reflect on that, hear about what works well in different institutes and faculties, but also to provide supports for the trainers. And I suppose that brings me on nicely to the trainer engagement program, which I've been so involved in over the last number of years. I'm not going to spend too long on this slide because I think Dermot stole my thunder earlier. But just to say, I've had 3 fantastic program managers during my time as clinical lead, starting with Roisin Craven, then Sean O'Donnell, who's here, went on to become part of the forum. And then Ken Carmody, who you met earlier. And we've had a fantastic time working together on the programme, and each of the programme managers brought a different flavour and a different skill set to the development of the programme, all under the watchful eye of Jess Dowling, their manager in accreditations and improvement projects. And we were under the watchful eye of, we had an excellent multidisciplinary training project working group, with representation from my chair, Michael, and also we reported them back to the training committee. What did the trainer engagement programme look like? We started in phase 1 getting feedback from the trainers. It started off as a focus group and also from the training coordinators and RCPI. Based on the focus group, then we developed a survey for trainers. We also then, phase 2 was looking at a trainer framework. So again, focused on supports for the trainers, which I'll talk to in a minute. And then phase 3 is the quality improvement. And this conference today is part of how the quality improvement piece looks. So following the focus groups, we created a survey and we circulated to trainers. We had very good response rate, I'm told, for surveys at 34%, with representation from 6 training bodies, 34 specialities and 81 training sites. And I think the slide speaks for itself. The training, your role as a trainer was really a very, very positive thing in the clinician's day-to-day role. And only 2% of trainers surveyed who responded to the survey said that being a trainer was a low priority. Then looking at what supports we can put in for trainers. So we created this thing which Dermot mentioned earlier, which is the Trainer Hub. Now it looks very simple because I'm very simple and my IT ability is pretty limited. So I want it to be really, really easy to find what you need to find. So the first thing which people need to find is their trainees e-portfolio. So up in the middle, there it is, click into it and you're into your e-portfolio. And then if you look into, we have 4 little folders, and I suppose I'll just point you to, one is there for your courses, which are available to you to participate in, but also in the resources. I think this was quite important to us. The RCPI has this wealth of policies and handbooks. I stumbled across a web page one day about 2 or 3 years ago, and I found all sorts of fantastic things, like how to help your trainee when they come back after a long period of leave. So it could be sick leave, could be maternity leave, how to ease them back in, support them, handle the challenges that they could face. There's a policy on it in RCPI and it's there now. You can click on the link and you'll be able to find it easily. There's other policies on bullying and how to handle that, on trainee well-being, what the college has to offer you as a trainer in terms of support for you if you're worried about your trainees' well-being, and also how you can direct your trainee if you feel there is an issue with their well-being. There's so many policies there that are really, really useful, and I just want it to be easy to find them. So that's the Trainer Hub. We also had a look at the roles and responsibilities document for RCPI trainers. We revised it and renamed it the trainer agreement in line with what the trainees signed. They signed a trainee agreement. We looked at the criteria to become a trainer and tried to make it really, really easy to know, am I eligible to become a trainer? Tick, 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 yes I am. And then what you need to do to maintain your status as a registered RCPI trainer. When we surveyed trainers, it turned out that over 2/3 of them were a trainer for more than 5 years, which meant that for many of them it was more than 10 years or even longer since they'd had some formal training on how to be a trainer. So 79% of those that responded to the survey said, actually, we'd really like a little refresher course so we could see, are we up to speed? Are we doing things the way we should be? Is it the same as it was 15 years ago when I did my Physicians as Trainers Essential Skills? So based on that and based on the feedback given by the trainers in the survey, we pulled together, we wanted to do it fairly quickly, so we drew on some of the courses that already existed in RCPI. We did a little bit of revision on some of the content of them. We took some steer from the feedback from the trainers as well. I mean, particularly myself, I want to do the little refresher on how to properly conduct a mini-KEX, how to properly do a case-based discussion. So it's my fault you had to live through all those again. And then at the end, once you completed we were targeting the trainers who were approved pre-2019, because if you were post-2019, you'd done this course in the last 3 years. So, and then once you had completed your course, you got 7 CPD points, and you're approved as an RCPI trainer for a further 3 years. We then surveyed the people who did the course, before that, and we launched the course in Q1 2022, and now 20 months later, 62% have completed it, and I am told reliably by Ken this morning there's another 3% who are edging their way along through it. So that was really quite good. I know we want 100%, but we compared ourselves with the RCPI, the Australasia Physicians Group, and they did a similar exercise, and at the end of 5 years, they had less than 60% had completed it or had even engaged with it. So for RCPI to have 62% completed and a further 3% engaged with it after 20 months, I think it says everything about you as trainers, your enthusiasm for your role and how engaged you are. And you know, was really, really encouraging to see. We then surveyed the people who did the course and said, well, did you think it was useful as an opportunity to refresh your knowledge and skills? And only less than 5% said they didn't think it was particularly useful. Now, I'm not in Narnia or La La Land. I know that not all of the feedback on the refresher course was positive, but the main themes which were critical was that the IT didn't work as smoothly as you might like. You've ploughed your way through your 6 courses. You're waiting for that certificate. You know, I finished, I'm now accredited for another 3 years, and then you hit return and nothing happens. So we know that there were some issues with the IT, and it's, I think, working through the Brightspace platform. We're now into an area that I really don't understand. But anyway, we heard the feedback. That has gone to our learning technologists in our education delivery team, and they're working on that as we speak. And we also, some of the feedback was that some of the videos were maybe a little bit long and a little bit dated. There was some very dodgy hairdos. So the good news is, based on that feedback, the educational development team have been revising some of the content, and the delivery team have been looking at how you work your way through it. And on the 20th of November, we're taking the course offline, so you won't be able to do it after the 20th of November. So if you're in the 3% that's nearly there, I suggest you try and finish it before the 20th of November. Or if you want to get it finished before the 20th of November, we're going to take it offline to do those repairs, to do that maintenance piece based on your feedback and try and improve it. And then the third part of our third phase, I suppose the phase that has brought us here today, is the quality improvement. This is our first trainer conference, which we held last year, some familiar faces up there. And despite horrendous weather, travelling in the snow from Kilkenny, it was very successful and the feedback was very good. And from now on, this is an annual event that we hope that you'll join us for year on year. So then I suppose the last piece in my pillars of your role as how you will be or how it will look as a trainer of the future is the piece around time. And the Royal Australasian College of Physicians recognised for some years now that really anyone in an educational leadership role needs to have time to deliver that role. And depending on how many trainees you had, or whether you were a network director or a programme director within a training site, they have a recommendation that there's a certain full-time equivalent allocated to your role as a trainer. UK also, in recognition of their trainers and the time taken to training, say there should be appropriate time in your job plan for your educational role. And I was having this conversation with Michael just earlier today, prompted by Michael, not by me. I'm sold. And really they highlight that it's important that you have sufficient training also for your educational role. So again, that's why we're here today, sharing ideas, reflecting on different ways of training, and hopefully we'll all bring something away with us after today, and then sufficient time in which to perform that role. So what are we doing in Ireland about time for training? Well, the good news is this has been, as I said, mentioned already, really an important part of the strategic framework produced by the Forum. It's also front and central in the NTP strategic plan, which is 2022 to 27. And within that, they highlight the importance to support and refine a national network for on-site education and training, develop and promote the role of clinical educators who support professional postgraduate clinical education on-site in clinical learning environments, and initiate a clinical educator pilot programme to lead, support and implement initiatives that enhance training quality at the clinical sites. And that brings me on to my next good news, that in 2022, the NTP and HSE launched for the first time hospital group clinical directors in education and training. Initially at 2 pilot sites, Children's Health Ireland, and the first clinical director to be appointed there was Dr. Sinead Murphy, and my own hospital group, South West Hospital Group, and my colleague, Professor Cook, who made the fancy slide, he was appointed our clinical director. And the best part of it all is they were given time. They were given 0.5 whole-time equivalent to take on that role, supported by local clinical leads who have 0.2 whole-time equivalent to take on that load. So we are moving in the right direction. So how do you find that time? This slide now is this is going to be a little bit controversial, but I think it's worth reflecting. We need to workforce plan for training. When we're workforce planning for service delivery, we need to also workforce plan for training. So if you're in a department that requires 4 whole-time equivalent consultants to deliver clinical service, then you need to think, well, if I'm going to have 4 consultants, will I have 4 trainees? Or I may have more if I have a BSD and HST programme. How much time am I going to need to be an effective educational supervisor for my trainee? Am I going to be their trainer? Do I need a training lead in my department, depending on how complex the training is? And then you need to recalculate and say, well, what is the additional whole-time equivalent which is needed to plan for my department to deliver training? So it could be the 4 becomes 4.5. And I think that is a seed I have sown with poor Tom Pearce in the NDTP. So hopefully the seed will take root and move on. So I suppose we're back to then, these are the main pillars that are driving the changes in postgraduate training in Ireland. On the far right-hand side, as I said, you have our forum and their piece on training our medical workforce for the future. Then, as I said, we've the imminent completion of the National Task Force on NCHD Workforce with the interim recommendations in 2023, where they've said it aims to further develop and foster a culture of education and training at clinical site level. And then we have the Medical Council, who their strategic objective 2 in their last statement of strategy was to ensure consistency and application of quality assured standards across the continuum of education, training and lifelong learning. So that's why I decided it might be time to make our standards green. I think we're nearly there. We're certainly heading in the right direction. And I suppose I've done it in a linear way, but it's not really linear. It really is a cyclical piece. So I think, first of all, we need to have a framework for trainers and recognise the professional role of the postgraduate trainer. We need to support the trainers. We need to give the trainer education to keep them up to speed with the best way of training. We need to give them time then to deliver the education, and that in turn will allow us to meet the standards that have been put in front of us to achieve quality and quality improvement within training. So I suppose then, finally, the question that I was asked to answer, what does the future trainer look like? Well, my colleague now in Sim might say it looks like this, that we may all be replaced by AI, but I hope not. There's no fun in that. So I suppose for me, I think this is a really exciting time to be a trainer in Ireland, particularly a postgraduate trainer in Ireland. There are not a lot of pieces of work nationally which I've tried to represent on the bottom of this slide, many of which have been in progress for many years, some more recent, but some for many, many years. And it's great to see them coming together. It's great to see a meeting of minds of the Irish Medical Council, the HSE, the NTP Forum, and the postgraduate training bodies, with a real focus on delivering quality and postgraduate training, and really focused on training the workforce that we're going to need in the future. The recognition, I think, so we have the standards, we're all striving towards quality. the importance that people are placing now in recognising the roles of the postgraduate trainer, be it at a strategic level or be it as a clinical supervisor and all the areas in between. Providing support to the trainer, providing education to the trainer to undertake the roles that they're expected to undertake, and then looking at how we're going to make time to be a good trainer. So I like to think that all of these pieces of work that are coming together really shows that Ireland is starting to put its ducks in a row in terms of how training is going to look into the future. And I'd like to think that the future of training in Ireland is looking a little bit rosier. So with that, I want to say, first of all, again, as Dermot has already, a big thank you to you, our trainers, because you are what deliver the training. You are the people who give the ideas. You are the people who ensure the quality. You are the people who engaged in these programs of quality improvement that we're trying to put together. And I also want to say a big thank you to RCPI teams. And Tim had an interesting controversial talk at the start, got us all thinking and reflecting. And I hope that with the guidance of the teams in RCPI, that we'll be guided as to how to adapt our curriculum, guided as to how to change our training activities. As they will, I'll be looking to my colleagues in education, in training and exams to tell us what the training landscape looks like, what is working. We asked Richard, is that going to work in my training site, what you're proposing? So I will rely on our research team to come back to me and say, okay, the research, he's published it now. He said it is working or it isn't working or you need to adapt it. And I hope that we'll be able to use the resource we have, the trainers, the teams in RCPI, and come together adapting to deliver a quality training programme. And then finally, on the quality note, this is a little survey that we're doing at the moment. It's to improve the quality of our study days. And I'm going to invite you all to raise your phones now and snap the QR code. If you're an NSD or a trainee, you get your own special one. But if you're a regular trainer like myself, I have done it. It will take you 5 minutes or less. And we're going to open it to all the trainers early next week. But if you want to get this done and do it for us now, that would be fantastic. And you'd have it done before the next queue for coffee. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic.